They are never going to see it coming, and so they won't be prepared. Michael Snyder reports, "There's nothing wrong with being optimistic, but blind optimism can be a very dangerous thing. The reason why so many of the experts, quote unquote, were shocked by the Great Recession of 2008 and 9 is because they didn't want to believe that such a thing could happen. Unfortunately, we're witnessing a similar pattern now. Even though we're absolutely drowning in debt, inflation is wildly out of control, our currency is being transformed into toilet paper, and housing market has started to crash and mass layoffs are being conducted all over the nation. A lot of the experts continue to insist that everything is going to be just fine. For example, the following comes from a CNN article entitled, 'The Case for a 2023 U.S. Recession is Crumbling.' Many CEOs, investors, and economists have penciled in 2023 as the year when a recession would hit the American economy. The thinking was that the U.S. economy would grind to a halt because the Federal Reserve was effectively slamming the brakes to squash inflation. Businesses would lay off workers and inflation-weary Americans would slash spending. I hate to interrupt CNN's wishful thinking, but the reality is that businesses really are laying off workers. In fact, the number of job cuts that have been announced through the first 5 months of this year is 315% higher than the number of job cuts that were announced through the first 5 months of last year. More workers are being laid off with each passing day. Earlier today, I was saddened to learn that Spotify has just decided that yet another round of layoffs has become necessary. Just a few months after announcing a significant wave of layoffs, Spotify plans to conduct another round of layoffs. This time, the job cuts will affect the podcast division as part of the corporate reorganization. In particular, the company plans to merge Parcast and Gimlet Studios. In an internal memo, Shahar El-Habashi, Spotify's head of podcast division, announced that the company was making changes that would lead to a workforce reduction of 2%. This change will affect around 200 jobs, and those who are impacted have already received an invitation to talk with someone from the HR department. Just like in 2008 and 2009, a lot of people that are losing their jobs are falling out of the middle class because they don't have any sort of a cushion to fall back on. The ranks of the hungry and the homeless are rapidly growing, and this has created an unprecedented crisis in many of our largest cities. The homeless that are truly destitute tend to live in tents, but those that have at least a little bit of money often live in RVs. At this point, it's being estimated that over 11,000 homeless people are living in RVs in Los Angeles County alone. There are, by the latest count, more than 11,000 people living in RVs across Los Angeles County, and that number has been rising. The COVID-19 pandemic forced many more people into poverty. Some of the RV dwellers have jobs but either don't want to pay apartment rent or can't afford to pay it in a city where the average one-bedroom apartment costs around $2,500 a month. Of course, wherever there is a homelessness crisis, there is almost always a drug crisis. Open-air drug markets now operating freely in communities all over the country. There are some cities where abuse is so bad that authorities have completely given up on trying to control it. One of those cities is San Francisco, and the result, real estate prices are falling much faster than the national average. The value of residential real estate in crime-ridden San Francisco has dropped significantly in recent years, with prices dropping by around 16.7%. This contrasts with a more moderate decline of 3.3% in the rest of the country, resulting in a difference of about 13.4 percentage points. The decline in the housing market in San Francisco has resulted in an additional loss of approximately $260 billion in the value of residential real estate compared to what would have occurred if the city had followed the pattern shown nationally, according to the research center Hoover Institute. Zillow, a real estate marketplace company, projected that the value of San Francisco's housing stock was close to $2 trillion before the price drop. Needless to say, many addicts must steal stuff in order to fund their addiction, and so we have crime rates soaring over the past several years. In Chicago, things have gotten so bad that one Walgreens store has actually decided to put almost all of their merchandise behind staffed counters. A Walgreens store in Chicago reportedly has been designed to allow customers to browse only 2 aisles of products after they pass through anti-theft detectors. The changes at the store on 2 East Roosevelt Road in the South Loop area put most of the merchandise in aisles behind staffed counters, and customers can shop digitally through kiosks, according to Block Club Chicago. Many other retailers are shutting down stores in cities such as Chicago, San Francisco, and Portland permanently. Our society is melting down right in front of our eyes, but don't worry. CNN says that everything is going to be just fine. You believe them, don't you? The Chinese certainly aren't buying it. In recent months, they have been stockpiling enormous amounts of gold. China added to its gold reserves for a 6th straight month, extending a flurry of purchases as central banks around the world expand their holdings of bullion amid escalating geopolitical and economic risks. China raised its gold holdings by about 8.09 tons in April, according to the data from the State Administration of Foreign Exchange on Sunday. Total stockpiles now sit at about 2,076 tons, after China increased reserves by about 120 tons in the 5 months through March. Central banks have purchased large amounts of gold in the past year to diversify assets, as well as to protect reserves from the impact of a weakening dollar and rampant inflation. The reason why the Chinese are stockpiling gold is because they can see that a global economic crisis is coming, and everyone else should be able to see it too. Conditions in the short term are going to steadily get worse, and in the long term, they're going to get really bad. But most Americans are just going to continue to trust our politicians and the experts on television that are assuring them that we're going to be able to avoid a major meltdown somehow, so they aren't going to do anything to get prepared, and in the end, they will be absolutely blindsided by an economic tsunami that they were absolutely convinced would never happen. And this is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and The Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media on Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times, and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is on the Economic Collapse blog by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.